Hello students, today we are going to discuss variants of communal politics in post-independent India. This unit would enable the students to understand communalism in Indian society, the variants of communal politics in post-independent India, changing patterns of communal politics and communal violence in post-independent India. In everyday language, the word communalism refers to an aggressive form of chauvinism based on religious identity. Chauvinism itself is an attitude that sees one's own group or self as superior, legitimate, worthy, with other groups being seen by definition as inferior, illegitimate, and opposed. This is a peculiarly Indian or perhaps South Asian meaning that is different from the meaning in English language. In the English language, communal means something related to the community or a collective unit different from that of an individual. Communalism is basically an ideology which consists of certain elements, a belief that people who follow the same religion have common secular interest, that is, they have same social, economic, and political interest. Accordingly, in a multi-religious society like India, these common secular interests of one religion are dissimilar and divergent from the interest of the followers of another religion. The interest of the followers of different religion or of different communities are seen to be completely incompatible, antagonistic, and hostile. Communalism is a social trait in religion. It is an ideology which communal politics is based on, and communal violence are the conjunctural consequences of communal ideology. Communal politics may also take the form of highlighting the community's interest of a religious group without necessarily generating hatred towards another community. What is important about communal politics is the fact that it is not driven by any religious issues, but by secular interest, which can range from bargaining for jobs in educational institutions, political patronage, separate representation, and also control over the institutions of government, etc. From a religious point of view, Indian culture is pluralistic. India is home to almost all the great religious systems of the world. Hindus are the majority of the population, and therefore Hinduism is the culture of the majority. And any group that does not conform to the majority culture is designated as a minority. The largest religious minority group in India are the Muslims. The relation between these two communities is largely shaped by the experiences of the past. The division of the country on communal lines, the seething bitterness triggered by the partition that caused thousands to perish and thousands more became homeless, still continues to loom large in the psyche of both the communities. Any understanding of communalism in India has to take into context these historical facts, because communalism in India is socially nurtured and politically manipulated. Now we come to communalism in Indian society in a historical context. An account of ancient India revealed that people lived in peace and harmony. There was syncretic relationship between different religions in the society. There were acceptance for each other's culture and tradition. For example, Ashoka followed religious tolerance and focused mainly on dharma. In medieval periods, we also have examples of rulers such as Akbar, who was an embodiment of secular practices and believed in propagating such values and brought people of different cultures and religion together. Some exceptions are there, of course. Different cultures and traditions was practiced in several parts of Asia. because of which peace and harmony prevailed, barring a few sectarian rulers like Aurangzeb, who was least tolerant of other religious practices. Such rulers and their actions, like imposing taxations on religious practices of other communities, plundering temples, forced conversion, killing of Sikh gurus, etc., were instrumental in deepening and establishing feeling of communalism and differences between communities in India. These incidents, however, are not common to the entire India, as huge majority of Indians were rural and were aloof to such influences, and so people generally existed peacefully. India also had a history of communal tensions from pre-independence time. The colonialists did not invent communalism or communal conflicts in India. There is also a long history of pre-colonial conflicts that infested Indian society. The colonial rulers simply politicized the already existing divisions and differences between communities in order to consolidate their rule. Therefore, communalism in India is a result of emergence of modern politics, which has its root in the colonial rule beginning with the partition of Bengal in 1905 and features of separate electorate under the Government of India Act 1909. Later, the British government also appeased various communities through communal award in 1932, faced strong resistance from most of the freedom fighters like Gandhi. Now we come to the variants of communal politics in post-independent India. Communal politics arose in British India mainly as a bargaining medium for position of economic privileges and social status under colonial rule. The British, to weaken the nationalist movement, encouraged communal and separatist politics and tried to strengthen the impression that the Congress was a Hindu organization. This was in line with their policy of divide and rule. The British government's support to separatist politics, together with the Indianization of the various industries and the elite's hankering for material privileges, gave way in the 1930s to the idea that Hindus and Muslims constitute two separate and hostile nations. Differences among communal elites about the nature of independent India and their political status in future strengthened the two-nation thesis. Communal consciousness arose as a result of the transformation of Indian society under the impact of colonialism and the policy of divide and rule adopted by the Britishers. The experiences of freedom struggle, the sharpened differences between various communities, especially the Hindus and the Muslims, continues even after independence. The newly independent nation, geared towards addressing the welfare and development needs of the vast majority, adopted policies that often alienated some communities or other. As a result, there has been a tendency on the part of the people to identify with their community. Identity was defined on communal lines. Moreover, economic growth and the breakdown of the previously settled relations among local communities and classes have led to the revival of religious identities and to their expression in public domain in conflictual forms. It is important to emphasize that communalism is about politics and not about religion. Although communalists are intensely involved with religion, there is in fact no necessary relationship between personal faith and communalism. A communalist may or may not be a devout person, and a devout believer may or may not be a communalist. However, all communalists do believe in a political identity based on religion. One of the characteristic features of communalism is the claim that religious identity overrides everything else, whether one is poor or rich, whatever one's occupation, caste, or political belief. It is religion alone that unites the people of a particular community. All Hindus are the same as all Muslims, Sikhs, and so on. This has the effect of constructing large and diverse group as single and homogeneous entities. It is noteworthy that this is done for one's own group as well as that of others without considering the underlying differences between people belonging to the same community. Another reason for the problem of communalism to persist in modern India is that the very concept of secularism in its true sense does not fit the Indian context. Secularization is nowadays generally employed to refer to, in the words of Peter Burgess, the process by which sectors of society and culture are removed from the domination of religious institutions and symbols. This is fine for the economic sector, but it is the political arena that finds it difficult not to utilize religion for its own benefit. This is more apparent in a democratic polity, where vote bank politics decides the course of the day. Secularism in a multi-ethnic country like India is a dream of a minority which wants to shape the majority in its own image, which wants to impose its own will upon the history but lacks the power to do so under a democratically organized polity. Another understanding of secularism in India is that most of the policies meant for the welfare of the minorities have been made to appease them. The pseudo-secularism has been used to describe such policies. Congress is often charged with such allegations. Policies in matters of personal law, such as the Shah Bano case, where the Parliament overturned court's judgment, and reservation based on religion on educational institutions are seen as examples of pseudo-secularism. On the other hand, BJP has been accused of presenting a communal narrative in Indian politics. Indian secularism has often been affected with electoral politics and has contributed to rise of communal disharmony. Communalism also got a boost and became a breeding ground due to the social, economic, and political discontent of the people. The post-independence phase saw major economic expansion, rapid industrialization, Indianization of services in government. This, along with education opportunities, created a system where aspirations of the people increased. They now had a chance to move to higher levels in the society. This also meant that communal ideology would take a backseat and was marginalized in the society. But later period saw the clash of interest as competition increased and opportunities stagnated. The socio-economic development was uneven and led to the marginalization of the classes. The growth on basis of capitalism also affected the society and created income inequalities. The lag between aspirations and fulfillment increased, and it was this period that saw the revival of communalism and communal politics. Over the years, as economic hardship have grown, the politics of the country has turned increasingly towards communal issues for political mobilization. Most often, this has resulted in communal violence. Violence is an important for communal politics as it leads to the communalization of the society and results in polarization, which brings votes and political power. Two types of politics exist that uses communal cleavages for gaining power. Firstly, communal politics openly resort to communal mobilization for political ends. There is also a politics which opportunistically resorts to communal mobilization for short-term electoral gains without taking categorical stand against communal issues, because that would have meant a weakening or loss of power for them. People, on the other hand, turn towards communalism as a response to the growing distress, disparity, and insecurity. People turn towards communal ideology due to misplaced anxieties. However, along with economic hardship, there were other reasons for the spread of communalism and communal politics. The old fabric of the society, like village communities, joint family, etc., were collapsing under the impact of modernization and were being replaced by newer organizations working on capitalist lines. The old values that cement societies are disappearing, and this had created a cultural vacuum that fueled the move towards communalism. People took shortcut towards acquiring political power by backing up communal forces and capitalizing on the obstructed mentality of the people. Another aspect that fueled communalism was the disappearance of the ideals of the freedom movement that had inspired the youth to take up secular ideas. The period after 1970s saw no new radical social ideal that transformed the society and inspired it to have egalitarian values. Now we come to the changing pattern of communal politics in India. Communal politics, after the emergence of Hindutva as a major ideology or ideological force on the political scene in recent times, has undergone certain changes. One, communal politics has acquired an openness, a legitimacy, and mass reach owing to the use of social media, compatible to and suppressing what the Muslim League could achieve during the British India. The legitimacy flows from a culturally majoritarian understanding of Indian politics, that is, an understanding which believes that since India has a religious majority of Hindus, Hindu politics is the most natural representation of the interest and aspirations of the entire population. Therefore, according to the understanding, Hindu politics should be acceptable to all because it is an articulation of the interest of the greater number, and that is what democracy is all about. 2. Present-day communal politics in its Hindu communal form challenges the very foundation of democracy in India. It calls for the formation of a Hindu state and challenges the basic principle of equal citizenship, secularism, religious tolerance and religious freedom, the foundation of a plural Indian society. Rather than governance by political majority, which is open to democratic contestation, it is oriented towards religious majoritarianism as the basis of political rule. It was not the case earlier. Earlier, communalism became a vehicle for economic or political influence, but never posed a threat to democracy. Hindutva has brought about a fundamental change in communalism in present day. The communal violence in post-independent India also reflects the underlying change. The partition of India and the concurrent communal flare-up between the Hindus and the Muslims remains the most traumatizing experience. The violence of partition days continued till 1949. No major communal disturbances took place till 1960. In 1960s, a series of riots broke out particularly in eastern part of India, Rourkela, Jamshedpur and Ranchi. In 64, 65 and 67, in places where Hindu refugees from the East Pakistan were settled. In September 1969, riots in Ahmedabad shook the conscience of the nation. The apparent cause was that the Jan Sangh passed a resolution on Indianization of the Muslims to show its intense opposition to Indira Gandhi's leftward thrust. In February 1983, violence took place in Neli as fallout to the decision to hold the controversial state election in 1983 in the midst of Assam agitation, after Indira Gandhi's decision to give 4 million immigrants from Bangladesh the right to vote. In October 1984, the anti-Sikh riots broke out after the assassination of Indira Gandhi, where more than 44,000 Sikhs were killed in Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and other parts of India. The Shahbano controversy in 1985 and the Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi controversy became powerful tools for intensifying communalism in the 80s. A bewildering consensus exists among the Indian Muslims about preserving the Sharia or the holy law against what they consider the legislative assault of a godless state, but other calls it indispensable to common civil law as the foundation of the modern state. It was witnessed in 1986 in connection with the rights of Muslim divorced women, especially the Shahbano case. This was followed by the biggest ever public protest by Muslims since independence 40 years ago, held at Delhi on March 30, 1987, to demand full possession of a 16th century mosque in the city of Ayodhya in North India, which was built after Babur's invasion at what Hindu believed to have been the birthplace of Lord Ram. The whole country held its breath, fearful of a counter demonstration of strength by the Hindus. The communal violence touched its apogee in December 1992, when the Babri Masjid was demolished by the right-wing parties. Meanwhile, Sikh and Hindu fundamentalists continue to face one another in Punjab. Social analysts draw attention to the contradiction between undoubted, though slow spread of secularization in everyday life on the one hand and the unmistakable rise of fundamentalism on the other. The Godhra riots of 2002, where car sevak returning from Ayodhya in Sabarmati Express were killed by burning the coaches of the train in which they were travelling. This act was followed by extended communal violence in Gujarat. The Godhra violence rocked the conscience of the country as people were killed mercilessly. Hindus and Muslim community were pitted against each other. Till now, people are fighting for justice in the Supreme Court with the hope that someday people responsible for their atrocities will be brought to book. Contemporary communalism is significantly different from the communal politics of the Jan Sangh in the 1970s and the BJP Ram Temple agitation in the 1980s, and social media has a big role to play in it. Today, violence is isolated in its eruption. Such region-centric flare-ups allow the right-wing political group to keep the pot boiling. Contemporary form of communal violence is confined to specific region and does not become state-level phenomena. The political economy of contemporary communalism is another important concern. The socio-economic concerns of people at the bottom level of the society and their economic hardship are transformed into cultural hatred. For instance, Gorakhpur's Hindu Yuva Vahini offers a fascinating description. The Hindu Yuva Vahini primarily targets unemployed youth in the region and channelizes their anxieties to pursue an anti-Muslim agenda. Communalism in contemporary times has become an everyday phenomenon. It is now a low-key affair, region-specific, caused by simple provocations, and social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp provide support to the strategy through constant propaganda. The issue of protection of religious minorities against discrimination and existing mechanism for accountability has been raging for many years now. There has also been criticisms of institutional bias in dealing with issues of discrimination and violence against minorities. P. Singh, in his article, Institutional Communalism in India, in Economic and Political Weekly, has argued the National Commission for Minorities, constituted as late as 1993, more than 43 years after the formation of the Indian Republic in 1950, remains a mere paper tiger without the power and institutional infrastructure to track systematic inbuilt bias against religious minorities. Hindu majoritarian bias pervades the Indian constitution, bureaucracy, security forces, parliamentary institutions, judiciary, prison, academic institutions, health, media, and cultural and art organizations. The Justice Sachar Committee report found that socio-economic conditions of the Muslim community in India are abysmally low, marginally above that of the Dalits, and worse than the backward classes. The Sachar Committee report clearly indicates that the Muslims suffer socio-economic deprivation. The report particularly highlighted the underrepresentation of Muslims in government administrative services, police, education, and low level of access to health facilities. However, not much has been done till date to uphold the recommendation of various committees to ameliorate the conditions of the minorities. To conclude, the problem of communalism in India can be understood as a problem of community relation between Hindus and Muslims. Hindu communalism is ideologically much stronger than Muslim communalism, and this strength comes from its ability to identify with Indian nationalism. Hindu communalism's trait to conveniently slip into claims of Indian nationalism is something which Muslim communalism can never achieve. This politics thrives in a situation of religio-cultural plurality on the one hand and uneven and retarded economic development on the other. Both these conditions, unless checked, communal politics will keep on thriving in India. Thank you.